open discussion.
Call Sue Moroney.
I want to address Clause 4 in Part 1 of this Act because I'm perplexed about the expiry date for this folly that is called the New Zealand Flag Referendums Bill. And while I mention the title of the bill, can I say at the outset that I think referenda is in fact the correct way to say this, and it's important because actually, as we know, children up and down this country in our state schooling system were forced to do projects on this to try and beef up the number of website hits because they were all directed by their teacher to go and look at the website. And so this is the reason for the government gloating about the number of people who went onto the website. It was children forced to do projects on this issue in their schools that were actually driving those numbers up. So the reason I raise that is because, Mr. Chair, I do think it's important when, if children have been doing this project, as I know they have been, that they are taught the correct English, and I think the plural of referendum is in fact referenda, but that's not what this bill says. The expiry date under Clause 4 is 2 years after the result is known of the second referendum. And I would like to know what the reason for that could possibly be. Is it that the Prime Minister wants to milk this until the election date? Because that's the only reason I can think of about why the expiry date might be 2 years after the result is known. But even more worryingly, when it comes to the issues that the public have quite rightly raised about the cost of this vanity project, Part 2, is that the right thing? Subsection 2 of Clause 4 introduces the idea of having a fresh referendum. So we could in fact end up having 3 referenda under Clause 4, because it actually says if the second referendum, if there is a declaration by the court that the referendum is void, then there's the ability under Clause 4 to have yet another referendum, a third referendum, which is introduced in Clause 4 of Part 1. So what does that mean? That means that probably we're up to about $36 million by then. And this is of concern because I have families talking to me all the time about how upset they were that government couldn't even find $4 million to increase paid parental leave to 6 months for families whose children had been born prematurely, had been born with disabilities, had been born where they were part of a multiple birth. And that miserable government opposite couldn't even find $4 million for that very good purpose for those families that desperately needed that support, but they will spend $26 million, potentially $36 million on this folly, this vanity project of the Prime Minister's to find out what they already know. For goodness sake, they already pay David Farrar a lot of money to poll everything within an inch of its life. Why can't they actually get him to do some basic polling on this issue to find out what has been published up and down the country already, that what we know is that about 70% of New Zealanders don't want to change the flag. They don't want to change the flag, and I think Ron Mark is right. I'm sure David Farrar has done some polling on this. They know already what the result of these referenda will be, but they have decided to push ahead because they actually think that $26 million, maybe $36 million, is a fair enough amount of money of taxpayer money to spend on promoting John Key, because that, at the end of the day, is what this is all about. Mr. Chair, I really do want an answer from someone from the Select Committee, or perhaps the Minister himself, about why we would unearth this bill would stay in place and not expire for 2 years after the final result is known. And by the way, I confidently predict that the final result will be a resounding no. A resounding no, John Key. We don't want to pay for your folly. We don't actually want you to use our children children as website fodder by forcing them to do these projects on changing the flag so that they have to go to the website and get the answers for their school project off the website and therefore drive the numbers up. No, John Key, we didn't want all that money spent making the panel go around New Zealand to see nobody.
Call Jamie Lee Ross.
The question be now put.
I call Pene